Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and I love board games. It's my full-time job now working in them, but there have been certain board games and games over my life that have brought me to where I'm at now, and I'm doing a series here of 20 games that changed my life, and today we're talking about Mage Knight. Now, when I first heard about Mage Knight, I was in the throes, in the grasp of Warhammer 40,000. I liked Warhammer 40,000, and we played it all the time. And so I was playing 40K one day, and a bunch of guys in the store were all crowded around one of my friends, and I was like, well, what's going on? And he said, look at this. He said, this is a new miniature game that's better than 40K. I was like, oh, better than 40K? I don't think so. And he said, yeah, but the miniatures are random. You buy a box of these and you get random miniatures. It's like, what? See, a lot of people don't realize that Mage Knight, which was the precursor to Hero Clicks and where it's at now, was originally a random booster box. But the idea, there was two things that blew my mind. One was the fact that there was random miniatures. I never heard of such a thing. I was like, can't you weigh the box and see which one has the bigger miniatures in, and how does that work? But the other thing was that the models were pre-painted. I did not like painting miniatures. This was a neat concept. And then the whole clicks thing itself on the bottom, as your creature got wounded, you would click it and it would take damage and it would change their stats. I found that to be really fascinating. I don't remember at the time if I bought a box or not. I got a few creatures. I looked over the rules and I was like, and I went back to Warhammer. Well, fast forward a year later, I was in Korea and I was getting a little tired of Warhammer, mostly because I couldn't find people to play it with, and the rules, people were gamifying the rules. And I remembered Mage Knight, and I was like, why not get some of it? I didn't get some of it. I got tons of it, like a whole bin full of it, and man, I had so much fun with that, just building armies. It got me back into just taking different groups of things and putting them together, and this dragon does this, and we would play, and you could play a little skirmish on a tabletop. And I think I got my wife to play one or two times, and she said, well, it's not as bad as Warhammer, but she still wasn't that interested in it. But I liked it because I had all these figures. But another reason this did it was because I was looking for a different kind of experience. The skirmish thing was fine, but I was still kind of leaning towards, is there a way to do some kind of role-playing experience? I still remembered one of my favorite games, Hero Quest. And I got Hero Quest, but we went through all the scenarios of Hero Quest and we were done, and I said, wait a minute, can you use the Mage Knight figures in Hero Quest? And we did. There was someone online, I don't remember who at the time, that emailed me. I found that they made a document on how to use them. There was a Hero Quest Castles, I think it was called, which was kind of like a dungeon crawl, but not quite. And so I used those rules and modified them. And this was the first time I'd ever really messed with very much modifying a game. I'd messed with Hero Quest in the past, but now taking the Mage Knight figures and using them in it just was this really cool idea. And then Mage Knight came out with these big tanks and siege engines and walls and castle walls, and so I was excited about that. I got all of it. And then I started playing board games. And I'm going to talk about that in the future, about me getting into board games. But this Mage Knight stuff just sat there, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Like I said, my wife wasn't interested in playing it. I couldn't get a lot of people into the theme, and I just had all this extra stuff. And then I made two massive trades right in a row. One, all my Warhammer 40K stuff, I traded to Richard Borg, designer of Commands and Colors series. I didn't know much about him, but he was interested, so I traded him all my stuff, and he sent me all his board games. And then all my Mage Knight stuff I sent to another guy who sent me a whole pile of board games in exchange for that, one of them being the Mayfair Cosmic Encounter. And I suddenly had piles of board games that I had instantly traded all my miniatures for. So Mage Knight was really cool because it showed me things I'd never seen before, collectible miniatures, pre-painted miniatures. That was awesome. But I also used it as a jumping point to get into the board game hobby, to get suddenly a pile of board games. I couldn't afford piles of board games, but I had this cash reserve of sorts that I was sitting on with all these miniatures that I traded in for board games, and suddenly I went from having no board games to a ton of board games. And that's one of the reasons why I'm at where I'm at now. So Mage Knight. Very different game than Mage Knight, the board game, which some of you board gamers may have thought that we were talking about. This is the miniatures version that the board game was based on, but I'm so glad that I got involved with it because it's one of the games that got me to where I am today. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time.